It was just another ordinary lunch break for Sam Beecham in the office canteen when his phone suddenly pinged. He looked at the screen, setting his ham sandwich down. A message appeared. Your appointment for your flu jab is on Friday at 9:15 a.m. Please report to your doctors as usual. With a sigh of relief, Sam leaned back in his chair. His colleague, Daisy, was sitting next to him, popping a couple of pills and washing them down with a can of cola. I feel awful, she muttered, rubbing her forehead. It's that bug going around. Sam smiled a bit, glancing at her. I've got my flu jab on Friday, thankfully. Just got the text. Daisy groaned. Ugh, my next one's due soon. I really need it. I'm full of allergy. Sam chuckled. I always feel a bit off right after the jab, so I'll probably stay in on Friday night to sleep it off. Yeah, everyone says that, Daisy replied. The jab makes you feel gross at first while your body fights off the virus, but it's totally worth it. Stops you from getting really sick from the actual bug. With the vaccine, when the bugs are going around, we're protected from the worst of it. Sam grinned. You sound like a health pamphlet, he teased, making Daisy roll her eyes as they shared a laugh. The flu jab wasn't just any regular vaccine, it was one of the many injections that the government health department rolled out to protect its citizens. These jabs were no longer optional, they were mandatory. The health department claimed that they were necessary to relieve the already overwhelmed healthcare system. Everyone had to get regular flu jabs. Every citizen received a text alert informing them of their appointment date and time. It wasn't optional, it was mandatory. And the flu jab wasn't the only one. Throughout the year, there were injections for nearly everything: boosters, vaccines, and shots for various ailments. The government's goal was clear: keep the population safe. During the spring and summer, there were hay fever jabs. Hay fever was a persistent issue for many, but thanks to these jabs, the symptoms were manageable. Without them, the discomfort would have been overwhelming. Each morning, the weather reports warned about pollen levels high, very high, or super high. Even with the jab, many still faced challenges with hay fever, but it was far less severe than before. As the colder months arrived, bringing flu and cold viruses, the public found some protection. Thanks to the vaccines, the widespread effects of illness were diminished. People still caught colds and experienced mild flu symptoms, but they were shielded from the worst outcomes. Every pharmacy was bustling with people purchasing remedies, cough syrups, pills, and anything they could find to fight off the relentless cold and flu that seemed to sweep across the nation. It was Friday morning, and Sam arrived at the doctor's office for his jab, just as instructed. He provided his name to the receptionist and took a seat in the waiting area. It wasn't long before his name was called. As he entered the room, the nurse greeted him with a smile and asked him to roll up his sleeve. In just a moment, he felt the sharp prick of the needle in his arm, and it was done. All finished. You might feel a bit off for a little while, the nurse said kindly. Sam nodded, sensing a dull ache starting in his body as the jab's effects began. He thanked the nurse and made his way out. The receptionist reminded him to keep an eye out for a text about his next booster jab before wishing him a good day. Sam replied. Whip. Later at the office, Sam settled into his chair with a cup of tea, trying to brush off the flu-like symptoms that were creeping in. A slight headache and an aching body were starting to take their toll. Just then, Phil Lloyd, a colleague, plopped down across from him. Phil immediately noticed that Sam didn't look too well. How are you feeling? I got the jab today, Sam replied, so I'm not at my best. Phil raised an eyebrow and shook his head. The whole thing is a scam. Sam blinked, taken aback. What whole thing? The flu jab, man. It's a scam. They inject us with this stuff to make us sick, and then we end up spending millions on cold and flu medicine. It's all part of the plan to keep the pharmaceutical industry rolling in cash. Sam frowned, clearly confused. But we get the jab to avoid getting really sick. It's supposed to help when the bugs are going around. Phil leaned in, jabbing his finger on the table for emphasis. It's them spreading the bugs in the first place so they can sell us the cure. It's all a game to them. Sam shook his head. That doesn't make any sense. Phil's tone was firm, but Sam remained unconvinced. Nah, surely not. We get the jabs to protect ourselves. Without them, we'd be in real trouble. Phil smirked. Who says? How do you know? What if it's the jabs that are making us sick? Sam rolled his eyes. You sound crazy. Phil's gaze sharpened. That's exactly what they want you to think. What if it's the jabs making you ill? So you end up spending half your paycheck on medicines just to feel better. The hay fever thing too. It's all connected. I'm telling you, it's big business. Sam raised an eyebrow. I didn't think you were the type to dive into conspiracy theories. Phil leaned back, his expression serious. But what if they're true? That's the real question. Sam shook his head, trying to ease Phil's tension. You shouldn't get so worked up about this. There's nothing you can do. Isn't there? Phil replied, his voice low but resolute. Well, no. What can we actually do? You have to get the jab, Sam said. Phil leaned in, his voice barely a whisper. I'm not going to do it. Sam stared at him, incredulous. You have to get your jabs. It's the law. You'll get in trouble if you don't. You've seen the ads, right? You could end up in prison for 2 years if you skip them. Plus, you might get sick. Phil just smiled. That's the thing. I don't think I'll get sick. When's your appointment? Sam asked, unable to hide his worry. It's tomorrow morning, but I'm not going, Phil replied casually. Sam's expression turned serious. You need to go. Don't mess with these people. Phil remained silent, wearing that cheeky grin, fully aware of his defiance. The next day, Sam entered the canteen and spotted Phil immediately. He set his mug of tea on the table and slid into the seat next to him. Please tell me you went for your jab this morning, Sam asked, concern evident in his voice. Phil shook his head, still grinning. Not a chance. Sam's expression fell. Did you at least let them know you couldn't make it? Phil laughed as he glanced at his phone, showing Sam the notification from the health department. Nope, I just didn't show up. Let's see what happens next. I've already got a text saying I need to go to my doctor right away. A chill ran down Sam's spine. Mate, please be careful, he warned, his voice low. Just then, Phil's phone rang again. The words health department lit up the screen, but this time, Phil didn't hesitate. He pressed the red end call button with a smile. Sam stared at him, concern etched on his face. I really think you should be careful. Early the following week, Sam ran into Phil again in the office. How are you getting on with the thing, Sam asked, keeping it vague so no one overheard. He didn't want to say out loud that Phil had skipped his jab. Phil grinned. Still ducking and diving, mate. Avoiding the calls and texts. I've had to switch my phone off at night. There are just so many calls. Really? What are you going to do? Sam asked, still worried about his friend. Phil's eyes hardened with determination. Keep on keeping on. I'm not having it done. If anything, this has made me more determined than ever. If they're that insistent I have to get it, I'm even more determined not to. If there's nothing sinister about the jab, why are they so pushy about it? And don't say it's for my own benefit. The health department doesn't care about P. That afternoon, Phil's manager called him to his office. Wondering what was about to land on his desk, Phil sighed and walked across the office floor, bracing himself for what came next. Phil walked into his manager's office and was immediately taken aback by the scene before him. Greg, his manager, sat behind the desk, but he wasn't alone. 4 medical staff in long white coats surrounded him, along with a nurse in full uniform.